for all issues with Trump, make no mistake, I am by no means, MAGA guy in a sense as MAGA crowd operates, but our family voted for Trump because he was the lesser of two evils, it's just obvious. And but when you hear this from Democrats, just give me a break. I mean, it's unbelievable how those people have enough audacity to claim anything, especially the fact that they played a key role in war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. And they were the guys who, basically killed 1.4 million of Ukrainian troops. They maimed another 2. And they essentially ended the Ukrainian statehood because it's a virtual state which completely depends on the support from the combined West.
It does, yeah, and it's hard for me to however much strong your desires may be in a certain area. That maybe the correlation is not the exact, but something along the lines of, I really want that Lamborghini over there. I really want it really bad. And I look at my bank account and I'm like, okay, I'll have to triple this 4 times over, or I can't even talk about this. And instead of just going, I don't know, I'll buy a model or take a picture. But instead I just keep, no, I'm going to have it. And the dealer's going, okay, where's your check? Because without that, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And yet you keep talking like that. It's just bizarre. And people would look
absolutely bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. They live in alternative universe. My last book is precisely about it. You know what? General Latif, Major General Latif, who served for 20 years in DARPA, and by the way, PhD also in physics and mathematics, and he was the guy at the cutting edge. And in his book in 2016, he wrote, and I quote, most of what American public and political elite know about war, they know from Hollywood, from, as he said, entertainment industry. He says you go to the congressman and try to explain to him, for example, the mechanics of the satellites, why you just cannot get the satellite and put it over some thing, and the guy wouldn't blank, they don't understand even these things. Now, can you imagine explaining them operational realities, how staffs of divisions work? It's, it's beyond their grasp. And they watched movie pattern, I guess, and then suddenly you have to explain to people what is correlation of forces and means, that the United States simply doesn't have this. And then, of course, Europe is just joke. And that Zelensky, he cannot do anything what he wants because he will be immediately killed, because obviously he is guarded by SAS, Special Air Service, which is, and MI6 guys. He is literally the puppet of London now. And guess what? London has a thing. Well, this thing is because they are losers, big time. They lost their empire, the rest of it. And they have the thing for Russians, But he can't accept anything because he will be immediately disposed of either by British or by his Nazi element, which is prevalent in practically every government institution now in Ukraine. It is a really neo-Nazi regime. And
I'm sure that but part of me has some sympathy because of the threat to his life from all different kinds of quarters. But ultimately, I can't. My sympathy ends because he has an obligation as the leader of his country to preserve his country and to do what is the hard stuff necessary to prevent pointless death, and he has failed in that regard. So. Unfortunately, he's put himself in this really position. But
absolutely.
But speaking of leaders, so I just saw there the U.S. rep there saying that the only thing that Putin understands is force and power dynamics. And yet, when you listen to what people are saying and what they have said, and let's go all the way back to 2014, 2015, 2016, 2019, 2021, et cetera, all the way through Istanbul, who is it that's been talking peace the most? The same guy who's still talking peace today.
As we have always said, we look positively to any peace initiatives. We hope that the representatives of the Kiev regime will also feel the same way. However, we have seen the initial reaction.
Все заметили, было опубликовано заявление, согласно которому наше предложение рассматривалось как игра.
I think everyone has noticed it. There was a statement published, according to which our proposal was seen as a game with fates, with people's lives and so on. But apparently there was someone smarter there who suggested, most likely from foreign overseers, that rejecting such initiatives is a losing position for the Kiev regime, and they quickly agreed.
So he's still looking for peace, but it's interesting in that same conversation. I know you probably saw more of it than I did, but he also was talking about this strike in Sumy last week, which a lot in the West said, oh, that's another evidence of this villainous Putin. He just killed a bunch of women and kids because that's all he wanted to do. And yet he said, oh, yeah, we fired that all right, but it was because you had an award ceremony for the people who committed atrocities on our territory in Kursk. And of course, many people will say, oh, he's just trying to cover over for that. Well, the Washington Post over the weekend validated that that's exactly what happened. But you haven't heard the condemnation on the Ukraine leadership for putting that event inside the city where the people were. But and yet that's where we are.
It's not, well, reality of what they did in Kursk area against civilians, and it's already attached. The investigative committee has a number of the criminal cases open there, and when it's not going to be reported in Western media, obviously. But just to give you an example, to take 15 kids and shot them, because they wanted the kids to die. They're Russians, as they call the Russians, Rusnya, so which is kind of, a slur, or they hate Russia so much that when you look at what they were doing to civilians, it's horrendous. They would be thrown out of Gestapo for cruelty for what they were doing. Torture, rape, and just to give you, well, I can say it, one of the prisoners of war, Russian prisoners of war, what he was done, he had his anus and the colon, he had the cement basically poured into it. This is just one of many things. They are committing atrocities unbelievable level, and obviously Russians have no obligations now to, well, let's be honest, very few prisoners, especially if you are from some Nazi formation. I don't think Russians take many prisoners anymore. There's no point. And that's the result and reaction to, as SS behave themselves sometimes less violently than these people do. And although some of them, yes, there are evidence and witness accounts which have been published, and they were speaking on the camera. They said there's some Ukrainian soldiers who had some humanity left in them. They told people of Sudzha, for example, run, because once Poles come, you will all be, and you saw yourself probably, they take children, get them into the cellar, put their, tripwire with a grenade, so when the kids open the door, it explodes, so it's just unbelievable. So, and that is coming into light. And now, Putin does what he has to do. And he supported overwhelming support of Russian society, just overwhelming. And that's what they expected, actually, when they started with. They thought, oh, okay, they listened to all this BS, from the so-called Russia experts, all those, all kinds of the fringe elements, who for some reason considered in the United States, in the West, as Russia experts. None of them is. And so say, oh yeah, you just do this, people will rise and remove this Putin's regime. People have no understanding even that as you look attentively at in every single aspect of their societal life, ranging from economics to military to culture to it's thriving. And we talked about this before. Everything they did, it's like opposite effect. And they cannot accept this reality because they have been taught and told for so many years, decades actually, that there's a backward, Asiatic people, and there is a lot of racial element to this too, So if you look attentively, for example, at the actions of the Nazis, Azov, and all kinds of people of this nature from Ukrainian side, they say that Russians are Asians and they're subhumans. They are Nazis, okay? What's new? So this is a serious element, which also affects, for example, people like in London. They killed it. Everybody knows it was British plan. Today, this morning, Russian Defense Ministry 75,530, I believe, of the armed forces of Ukraine in Kursk alone. That's British military planning. Why were they doing this? Because this is fanaticism and lack of military understanding. They were doing because they just like, scratch, speed, whatever, just harm Russians anyway. What they did, the Russian general staff said, okay, welcome, come here. And they killed 75,000 people.
And what do you say to those charges from the Ukraine side that says that Russia has been conducting itself not according to the Geneva Convention, that they've been executing prisoners of war, they haven't been treating them right, and those kinds of violations? What do you say to that?
Oh, it's complete BS. I mean, it's actually very many of them are prisoners of war. Many of them, when they're taken prisoners, especially just regular guys, army, not necessarily Nazi or some kind of like paratroopers type people who are primarily known not for combat qualities but for committing atrocities. But these guys, many of them asked not to be exchanged back to Ukraine. And many of them, when they taken prisoners, they ask, don't kill me or something like that. But Russians say, no, we don't. They go into those camps. They are provided medical, they are fed. Many of them ate properly, like in a long time when they are there. So it's all those things. And Putin and his team, they are lawyers in the end. Also, apart from being the intelligence people, and Putin is the judicial purist, so those things on average, Geneva Convention is followed to the letter, So, but there are some categories, especially Nazis. Well, just to give you an example, the favorite trick why they stopped taking those prisoners. Like Azov battalion, especially fanatics, many of them are drugged. They say, oh, I surrender. They drop the gun, okay? The guys come in, and then they have the other gun, for example, the other Kalashnikov over there, hidden near them, and they start shooting. That's, that's what they are.
Let's see. Let me ask you a question. I want to go to some of our viewer comments here. I thought this was a good question. It says, my fear is that Ukraine will reject any of the peace deals that are currently being worked on and do something insane like sending drones into the May 9th parade in Moscow. What do you think about that possibility?
Well, it's a definite possibility. Well, the Russian air defense is pretty good. But yeah, the West will justify it. Absolutely. So, and well, considering the fact that there will be people like Z and Modi, there are many people in the West who would love all of them being gone, for example, okay? There's no doubt that Vladimir Putin is the subject, so to speak, and object for some people. You know what? His life is guarded, obviously, but yes, absolutely, that's what they will be trying to do. But in this case, I think there are back channels from which Russians can warn. Listen, one of the things, just recently, Zelensky went to Kherson, okay? Russian side saw it, tracked him, his cortege, all that, so you can kill him anytime, but Russians are not gonna do that. But if something happens, then yeah, all bets are off.
And sorry, must move there. I want to get back onto the issue of the ceasefire and potential end of war negotiations, etc. I mentioned at the outset that Secretary of State Rubio, made a pretty bold statement. I think it was last Thursday in Paris after some meetings on Wednesday, where he said just declaratively that we're willing to walk. Here's how he put it.
The president has spent 87 days at the highest level of his government, repeatedly taking efforts to bring this war to an end. We are now reaching a point where we need to decide and determine whether this is even possible or not, which is why we're engaging both sides. As you know, Ambassador Witkoff has had not one, not two, but 3 meetings with Vladimir Putin to determine the Russian perspective on this and understand what it would take for them to end it. We, through General Kellogg, myself, and others, have had repeated engagements with the Ukrainians. So we came here yesterday to sort of begin to talk about more specific outlines of what it might take to end the war. to try to figure out very soon, and I'm talking about a matter of days, not a matter of weeks, whether or not this is a war that can be ended. If it can, we're prepared to do whatever we can to facilitate that and make sure that it happens, that it ends in a durable and just way. If it's not possible, if we're so far apart that this is not going to happen, then I think the president's probably at a point where he's going to say, well, we're done.
First of all, I want to ask your opinion from the Russian perspective, as far as you know, from what you've read or your contacts. How was Rubio's comments interpreted?
In a positive way. How about the United States get the hell out of the way completely, you know? So that's what it was. So, no, I mean it. It's, I think it's the part of the game. And Witkov wasn't sitting with Putin for 4.5 hours last time just to discuss some kind of the territorial arrangements, or even discussing Iran. Okay, how much time did they discuss Iran there? For an hour, maybe, you know. And Putin understands good English, you know, he understands, and he can even speak. Of course, he had the interpreter. But the point is, it is all part of the maneuvering. And the Russians know that they have to help Trump, so to speak, to kind of have the justification to say, oh, hell with it, I did all I could and move away. Russians are aware about internal political dynamics in the United States, orders of magnitude better than it's other way around.
Yeah.
And the point is that Russians do not mind, you know, helping Trump out on this. For example, this what is called little bone, which was thrown, which it is a bone, you know, let's face it, this moratorium on the energy infrastructure, Russians judicially followed all those 30 days, which ended on the 18th, by the way. So, and in this particular case, Russians are going to dance for a while more. But reality is that the United States cannot be the honest broker. And there is no other solution than just elimination of the neo-Nazi regime. Everybody understands. Zelensky, this bunch of their people who created what it was, you know. And again, you have this, you know, moments of lucidity even from Trump. When he wants to say the right thing, which he tries to say that, in the end, well, yeah, it's NATO essentially. Ukraine started the war. Well, it did, you know. So, and when you look at all that, there's some diplomatic dance, and maybe what we see and what Rubio says, even considering the fact that he's a neocon and he has this Walz guy, I don't know how Doug McGregor didn't become the national security advisor. It's just beyond me, you know. So it's like they have this guy, you know, Ranger, you know. So he. And you have those people, but Russians understand that they need to provide, and again, this is the superpower dialogue. It's not like Russians will talk to French, you know, it will be, you know, like bulldog talking to Chihuahua. No, you're talking about equals, you know, you still talk to people who are superpowers. Do you want to give Trump off-ramp? Yes, you want. But after that, you allow him this tactical or strategic maneuver, if you wish, that, okay, I done all I could, didn't work out, blame Zelensky, which already is happening in many respects. And maybe it also can give him the pretext of dealing with neocons. I don't know how much he wants to deal with them, but at least in this particular case, because two superpowers have to find modus vivendi, no matter what anybody says. But you know what? If, let's say, Germany and UK go with each other, nobody cares, really. If United States and Russia go with each other, it's over, you know, pretty much.
Yeah.
We're done. So this is different weight categories, and that is why Russians playing this game that, okay, let's give him another chance for the off-ramp.